All right. Very nice to meet you, Lewis. Welcome to the Eagle's Nest. A little bit of an impromptu interview, but glad we're actually able to make something happen. I was surprised. I did not think that this interview was going to happen because the media production studio is booked out all week. And what's crazy is I talked to a kid yesterday who is actually involved in the reason why it's being booked out for the week. They're doing interviews with veterans.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I think it's like a service learning project for like a class, for like a junior class or something like that. But yeah, I thought that was a little funny. Somebody's
Pretty ironic.
taking all my stuff, but All right. So go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Luis Martinez Jr., I came to FGCU in 2009 as a freshman right out of high school and graduated in 2012. Grew up a Navy brat. My dad actually just retired from the Navy with 33 years of service.
Wow.
So grew up, I'm 31 now, so I was around that my entire life. He's in the military longer than I've been alive. So I always knew I'd want to serve in some capacity. Wasn't sure. Decided to go to FGCU after going to a career fair or like a college fair with my dad.
Right.
Met someone, just saw the pictures, and I was like, wait, like someone's gonna pay for me to go to school at this like resort essentially.
Yeah.
So I came on a visit, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to school here. So
yeah, it's a beautiful campus.
It's crazy, and even like now, hey, it sounds like I'm dating myself, but like when I was here, 14 years ago, in 2009.
Wow.
Like the stuff y'all have here, the only thing that was open late at night was McDonald's.
Yeah.
Like, that was it. Like all this extra stuff. It's great to see. I'm excited that it's grown, but like I was like, man, like life would have been a little bit better.
Yeah.
If we had some of the stuff that y'all have now.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but so came to FGCU, graduated, and then I wanted to join the military. Spoke with every branch. Was leaning towards the Marine Corps. Talked to a Marine Corps officer, selection officer, and he was like, hey, say 6 months, get you in shape to where I could call you up at any time of the day. You show up and you need to run like a perfect PFT.
Right.
He's like, let's 6 months, put 6 months to get you there. He's like, and then once you can do that, it can take a year to get you selected. So me being, 21 and newly 21, I was like, graduated college a year early. Do I really want to sit around for a year and a half? And after talking to my dad, getting his advice, I chose to enlist because I'd get more of a hand-on skill set, and I wanted to do intelligence.
So what were you like that you said you had to wait for a year to get selected? What were you getting selected to do?
Become a Marine Corps officer.
Oh, okay.
Just the process, physical,
Yeah.
doing all the different things. The guys like on average it takes a year, right?
Wow.
So with the getting in shape and then the year, it was like a year and a half. That's too much time, right? So chose to enlist, and I talked to each recruiter, and the Marine Corps is kind of like the one that presented the most challenge, and I felt kind of like looking back at the time, like kind of excelled at things for life, and I was like, well, I want more of a challenge.
Another challenge.
And the Marine Corps was a challenge, right? So
no kidding.
definitely got what I asked for. But I listened to the Marine Corps in May of 2013 as a geospatial intelligence analyst. So I was, my job was to use maps or to create custom maps to support military operations.
Wow.
So I did that for 5 years. I was fortunate enough I graduated #1 in my class for my schooling. Went to Camp Pendleton, California, where I was stationed at First Intel. Spent 4 years there. And then in 2018, I got out, and I happened to go visit my fraternity brother from K here at FGCU.
Yeah.
In like 2016, he was going to Texas A&M, and kind of had too much fun there. Went too many drinks and enjoyed the atmosphere. And after a few beverages, I was like, I'm going to go to school here. I was like, yeah, sure, you will. And then a year later, in 2017, they offered an online Master of Geoscience.
Oh, wow.
So it was like a program that just happened to be online that aligned directly with what I was doing job-wise. So I was like, hey, it's what I want to do moving forward for the rest of my life. Might as well get a master's in this, to help, align with my work experience. So I did that online. Fortunate enough to graduate. We were one of the first seven to graduate from that program. And while I was in that program, I had one of the professors take an interest in my background and kind of ask what my goals are. And at times, I just want to make geospatial capabilities improve for the military, intelligence, all this stuff. And he's like, sounds like you want to do a PhD. I was like, that's not what I said. I want to improve things. He's like, yeah. He's like, it's how you improve things. You research, develop something, research, and kind of make it better. So I was like, all right, let me think about it. Decided to apply. Fortunate enough to get selected. So whenever I EAS'd, got out of service in June of 2018, I moved to Texas A&M in College Station, Texas.
Wow.
So finished up like my last semester of my master's in fall of 18, and then started a PhD in spring of 2019.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's again, if you had asked me 5 years ago, so I'd put us in like 2017, I'd be doing what I'm doing now. I'd laugh. I'd be like, there's no way.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be doing that. And so I've been in the PhD program since, a little bit delayed of where I'd like to be. COVID, shut down for everybody.
Yeah.
So it delayed some stuff, and the nature of my research, which is mapping GPS denied environments in support of military operations. I use LiDAR scanning and other like 3D modeling.
Oh.
Sensors are expensive, so I had to wait,
Yeah.
on other people's schedule to get access to. So that, coupled with like a year and a half of doing nothing in terms of being stuck at home,
Yeah.
delayed where I'm at. But in that time at A&M, I've been selected as a National Defense Science and Engineering Graduate Fellow.
Wow.
So it's a fellowship that helps that's sponsored by DoD, and their main goal is to increase the number of American scientists.
Yeah.
You don't owe them anything at the end. They want you to go work for DoD, and I just happen to want to go that route. But you just get school funded for 36 months.
Wow.
And then that was in 2019, and in 2020, fortunate enough to be selected as a Pat Tillman Scholar. So, are you familiar with who Pat Tillman is?
I've heard of the scholarship before. I've seen it. I'm not sure. I think I tried to apply for it once. Yeah. Give a little bit of a background.
Yeah. So Pat was a football player in the NFL, and after 9/11. Did some self-reflection. He was like, yeah, I'm not doing anything. I need to go out there and serve my country.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave up a multi-million-dollar contract and chose to enlist in the Army and became a Ranger.
Wow.
So he did that, served, I think it was a couple tours overseas, and unfortunately, on his last one, he was killed in action. There was a whole investigation, but, there's all that stuff that goes into that. But his family decided, let's carry his widow and his family decided to carry on his legacy, and they established the Pat Tillman Foundation.
Wow.
So initially it was started off where essentially military spouses and dependents could all apply. Then after a few years it switched to just you have to be veteran, active duty, reservist, or the spouse of one of those.
Right.
So you apply, and it's a great organization to be a part of. It's very selective. So again, I count my days where I'm like, oh, I'm so lucky to be, because sometimes when I meet my fellow scholars, I'm like, how did I join an organization, with people like you in it? But they help fund our education and help us grow, as individuals, so we can be leaders in our industry. My premise was to, improve geospatial capabilities for the government while preparing the future workforce. I'm getting older, and eventually there's going to be a time where like, hey, I can't do all the things the young guys or girls are learning.
Yeah, gotta let the youngins come in.
Like teach them, because again, I'm able to do what I've been doing because I had great mentors and leaders along the way that instead of just hoarding information and skills, they taught me. And I think it's like my duty to pay that forward and do the same.
Oh, 100%.
For those. So I teach as an adjunct professor. So that, again, that's one way to do that, and then I try to mentor anybody who's willing and wanting to listen and get some advice.
Wow.
So that brings me up to school where I'm at now. I'm married. My wife was a Marine as well. She has the same job, and we have a 2.5-year-old named Mackenzie. So cool to be a dad, and it's weird being at FGCU like now that I'm a parent, and compared to what I was when I last was here. And then what brings me here today is about a little over a year ago, I called Troy, not knowing who Troy was. I just had this feeling, let's reach out to FGCU. I've learned some stuff about serving veterans through my work at Texas A&M. Let me see what they're doing there and how I can help. So called, got pushed around to a couple people, and finally someone's like, oh, you need to talk to Troy Boulevard. And I was like, okay, who is that?
Yeah. Put
me in contact with Troy, and honestly, I'm a firm believer in things happen for a reason. And I think that was whatever feeling I had to call that day, it was meant so I could meet Troy and kind of share my background. And he's like, you're a Tillman Scholar? Why haven't you told us before? Like, I don't know. I'm not just going to call back, hey, by the way, I have this award. You guys need to acknowledge me. And he was like, no, we need to know things that our alumni or veterans are doing these great things. But now we work together. He gives me advice on things, and I do it so in return, and trying to support veterans and military affiliated students here at FGCU. FGCU is important to me. Came here as a young man, 18 to 21.
Yeah.
Learned a lot, developed things, made relationships that helped me become who I am today and put me down the path where I'm at. So Not a millionaire where I can donate to get my name on a building, but I have time and
Getting there.
just trying to help people, and bring some resources that I wish I had when I was a student here.
100%. Yeah, that's really amazing. I've never heard of a story of a veteran who went to school first,
Mhm.
like went to school and then went into the military.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's something that's not very like heard of.
Yeah, so typically officers, they have to do that. They go to school and then
Oh,
they
really?
go in. But I could have gone that route, but chose to enlist, which a lot of people are like, oh, is that the right route? Because you could be an officer. But looking back, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And honestly, I think if I was a 21-year-old Marine Corps officer, I probably would have been a little too cocky,
Yeah.
too big for my britches. So it's probably better that I went enlisted, learned stuff, and got a little humbled to
Definitely.
be where I'm at today.
Definitely. Yeah, that's really amazing. How was the experience of getting up to your job of being a geostationary?
Geospatial analyst.
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time.
Geospatial analyst.
Geospatial analyst.
Yeah.
So how was the process of getting to that point?
Yeah, so with the Marine Corps, whenever you're enlisting, you have to sign your contract. You put 3 jobs that you want. So
Yeah.
there's like intelligence. I think I put like military, police, and I don't remember what the third one was. So they say they're going to fight for your first one. If you can't get that, you have to take your second, or you might even get your third.
Do they really fight?
I mean, at least I think my
From
recruiter
what you know?
did. Yeah, well, my recruiter, she must have, because she got me the job. She got me my number 1 choice.
All right.
So, shout out to her, because without her doing the work she did, I wouldn't have the job I have now.
Yeah.
So got an intel contract, go to boot camp, and it was not till you're at boot camp doing all this paperwork and going through all the stuff you have to do that they pull you in and they're like, hey, you're going to be an O261. I was like, what is that? And they were like, kind of how you're struggling to say geospatial. They're like, geo something intelligence analyst. And I'm like,
whatever.
I was like, sir, what is that? Can I say bad words?
We'll edit them.
Okay.
Edit them
Well,
in
then
post.
he's like, I don't know what the fuck that is. And I was like, and I like me at boot camp, I'm like scared, like good to go, right? And so I essentially had to write a letter to my parents at boot camp, like, hey, I got my MOS. It's this. I probably spelled it wrong. I wish I could find the letters, and I was like, can you find any information? And so they found some Googleable thing and sent that to me, and that was all the information I had. And it's kind of like, all right, I guess this is what my job's going to be. Go to the schoolhouse in Virginia. That was about 10 months of schooling.
Wow.
You learn how to use GIS software. At the time it was ArcMap. And then we also learned how to do surveying. How you see, construction crews on the side doing all that. We learned how to do basic stuff of that. And then after that, graduated and went to Camp Pendleton.
Wow. So, I always wonder what those construction workers are doing with like the cameras and everything. So, can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so it depends on which system they have.
Yeah.
But like there's some that are laser scanners. So they'll have like a LiDAR, which is what I do which is light detection ranging.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially it shoots like an invisible light. It hits a point, collects that point, the distance comes back, and it collects millions of them. And they build a point cloud. And so it lets you have like a reconstruction of the room based on a bunch of different, bunch of millions of points.
Wow.
So there's stuff that does that. There's stuff that you're shooting at a specific point. So like this tripod here, there'd be like a reflector on there. And from your machine, you're hitting that. And with the math the system does, it tells you the exact spot that's sitting over. So that could be where they're going to put some kind of pole or something.
Wow.
So they have the exact geographic coordinate for it.
Wow.
They do it to leveling things. So there's a bunch of different things they could be doing.
Yeah.
They're out there trying to make sure they get the exact geographic coordinate and make sure things lines up based off plans, or if they're going to adjust plans. And all that stuff.
Yeah. I've heard of LiDAR more recently with Apple using it, and also I saw research of scientists using LiDAR to look through the Amazon forest and finding, a bunch of, strange things in there. It's really interesting seeing that kind of technology. But did you have, obviously, I mean, like 2009 onwards, that was a time when technology was still kind of developing.
Yeah.
Did you have LiDAR back when you were starting to learn all the tools of the trade and everything, or did you get new technology as you progressed?
Yeah, so as a student here at FGC, I was a criminal justice major.
Okay.
So I was going to go I thought I was going to go into law enforcement.
That's interesting.
It shifted. But so I didn't have access to that actually. I probably didn't know what LiDAR was until probably 2013 when I was actually in the Marine Corps. So we had access to some as Marines, collected from a program that, as they fly over, that we'd use for certain analysis that we're running. But I didn't get to use actual like LiDAR scanners and stuff until I think I might have used like one or two in the Marine Corps, but a lot of it was when I got to grad school. Being in different programs and professors doing their research, they had access to things, and it just kind of blew my mind that you hit a button and this machine just collected this whole room.
Yeah.
And it looks like you're in the room based on the amount of points it collected.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, what do you think from everything that you've seen was like the coolest technology that you're able to engage with or interact with?
So,
or that you even seen?
Yeah. So I think it's great the work you can do with like drones. So over-the-counter drones, you can get those, and they're the more, I guess, the fancier you want your sensor to be, the more it costs. But like you could go get a license, take the test to get your drone license. You could start flying, doing some of these scanning within weeks. Instead of your test by your drone, you could go out there, do all that stuff. But I think what amazes me the most is the size of some of the scanners. Like the new iPhone, I have an iPhone 12 or 13.
Yeah.
It has LiDAR in it.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest in comparison to what I have for my research, but I've used a $50,000 scanner. So obviously your phone costs $2,000. Your scanner's not going to be as good.
Yeah.
But for what it is and the 3D models you can create.
Yeah.
And for something that you're supposed to use to make phone calls, you just have that in your pocket.
No, yeah, it's super interesting. I noticed that. Yeah, I have the 13 Pro Max, and I noticed with the pictures, like if you take pictures of like a hillside or something like that, you can see like the almost the three-dimensional detail in the valleys and stuff like that. It's really, really interesting.
And I think just as time goes on, technology improves. Like the stuff that when I was in the Marine Corps, or like when I first started my research, that were like, oh wow, that's really cool. It's just going to be like the norm. And you'll have that in your pocket, and it's not going to cost thousands of dollars. It'll just be part of your everyday life.
Did you get to see anything, like any developing technologies while you were either in graduate school or working as a geospatial analyst?
Work-wise, I can't really talk about that stuff,
Yeah,
but grad school, there's some people doing great work at Texas A&M. I remember I was in a ESSM at the time, I think environmental science, I forgot the acronyms, but it was a grad class where we did a lot of work based on the professor's research. He does LiDAR. He did a lot of foliage penetration, so like trees and all that. And through a script him and some of his grad students developed, they were able to take LiDAR data, and they have a tool where you could just draw where you think around the ring of the tree, and it'll tell you the measurements of the trunk, or the leaves, and all this stuff. And like it was just things that people are creating these tools in their research, and there's applications to this. As you mentioned, finding like lost civilizations.
Yeah.
So you're able to get data from an area, very highly detailed data, without ever stepping foot there.
Yeah.
And then kind of lets you know, like, is it worth risking our life to go into this area? Find out that stuff before you ever go. And again, as things progress, it's just great to see where it's going. And I think making it more accessible, that's where we'll see a lot more change, because it'll be a point where you could you and your buddies just pull up a LiDAR scanner, scan some stuff, and then you might be able to create something new, whether it's a methodology or an app, and that could be the next big step in the game of LiDAR.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about like the military application of what you were doing. So like what did they use your data for? Like was it for plotting certain routes for troops to go, or what?
Yeah, so we did a variety of things. So it would be something from if we just needed a big map displayed on the wall. If we're doing some training exercises, we would take what's great is we can make custom products, right? So we have, let's say, California, that's where I was stationed at, and we want to do a fictional exercise of, hey, there's a bridge here where there's a bridge that doesn't exist. We can put that on the map. So as we're doing military training and tactics, we can add all that stuff to there. We can help them decide, for example, like we take the terrain for the area, take the vegetation, if there's rivers, are they intermittent, where like is there water there all year, is there any water during like rainy season, and we could tell you based on the vehicle you want to drive with the weight in it, which is the best route for you to go to avoid getting stuck, and things like that. So it's a tactical decision aid. We can give you. It's not like 100% accurate, like correct. I can't say, hey, you will 100% make it through.
Yeah,
but
there's a
more,
probability.
more than likely you can go this route.
Wow.
And just make it safer for the. Again, I'm not kicking down doors, but I want to provide the skill set I have to make life easier and safer for those guys. And
Oh,
girls who are
definitely.
kicking down
Yeah,
doors.
because any data or anything provided to those service members who are out there, anything could help.
Yeah.
In any situation. But that's really, really interesting. I've never really talked to somebody who's in more of like the science of the military. You know what I mean? Just the past couple people that I've interviewed. I mean, I've interviewed some technicians and some stuff like that, but yeah, you're a little bit you're interesting.
Yeah,
to say the least.
So I will say, in the Marine Corps, we didn't learn as much the science of it. It was more the application.
Right.
So that was when I got to grad school. That was probably the big adjustment where compared to my peers, when it came to like, hey, we need to run this analysis, you need this result, I was probably outshining them there. But when it came to explaining the science behind it, that's where I had to do a little bit more work, because Marine Corps kind of taught you the basics.
How to use it.
Yeah, I know how to use it, but also at the same time, it's good to know what's happening in the background.
Of course.
Because you're like, sometimes you get a result and you're like,
you're not sure.
That looks off, but it keeps saying this, but understanding like, okay, hey, I put in this data set, I put in this, it should be doing this. Why would I imagine my head is not on the screen? And having that background knowledge helps. And sometimes just you're wrong in your head and it's right, but like I've been able to catch mistakes because I expect it to be one way and it was very off. It's like, all right, well, let me go back and check.
Yeah.
And there was an error somewhere along the way.
Yeah, and that's really, that's the true science behind it, is understanding how something works, and if it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, understanding all the components of it and being able to identify the error from that. Looking back on your service, what do you think is the most valuable thing that you learned in the military?
I had a sergeant when I was in the schoolhouse who gave me great advice. It was a little selfish, being younger. I was trying to achieve all these things,
right?
And wasn't really, not that I was dragging people down, but I wasn't necessarily bringing people up with me. And he noticed that, and he's like, hey, like, why are you doing this? I'm like, well, the person in charge said, these are competition. If I don't outshine them, they're taking money out of my bank account, food off my plate.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's dumb. Don't listen to him. He's like, you do what you're supposed to do, learn what you have to do, teach your fellow Marines, whether they're your peers, seniors, or below you. If you take care of them, everything's going to work out for you. And
100%.
One of the first things in my head was like, well, what if I help this person? They get promoted before me. He's like, then it just wasn't your time to get promoted. And I was like, all right. So that was a big realization for me. It's like, okay, hey, as I'm doing all this stuff, it doesn't really mean anything if I'm not bringing people with me. So as I achieve the things I achieve, I make sure to like keep the door open, for the next person to come in as well. Because at the end of the day, if I achieve all these great things, but people kind of think I'm an asshole, like, did I really achieve anything, But
your success is defined by the people who are around you.
Exactly. So I try to make sure with friends and people I meet, and especially here at FGCU, like, hey guys, like I was once in your shoe. I came to FGCU, went to a smaller school. I'm at a really big school now. I've earned these awards. Y'all can do it too. And if you have questions about it, here's my phone number, here's my email. Reach out to me. I'm happy to, whether we do Zoom or just email, chat back and forth. I'm here to help you because I had people help me along my journey. Yeah. And I just want to pay that forward.
Yeah. That's a really awesome thing. It's always, there's always people who need help. There's always someone, who needs a leg up in things. And, I am similar to you in that way where I want to help people out. But, I feel like I'm also kind of at that point where I'm trying to figure out, I feel like, sometimes I could be a little bit selfish, not always bringing people up with me, but not necessarily bringing them down. Yeah. But, just having, just support there, whether, you need it or not, is always important. Yeah. And, that I really appreciate that with what you're doing, especially with, the Tillman Scholarship and, You're with Travis Manion Foundation too, right?
I volunteer with them.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
they came to campus yesterday. So
Yeah.
that's some work I did being at Texas A&M, and then with Dion Berger, who works for Travis Manion Foundation in Texas, he put me in contact with the rep Erica Marsh, who's oversees Florida, and so we all had a meeting. Myself from A&M, Dion, Erica, Troy, and we talked about what we did here and how we think would be beneficial for FGCU.
Yeah.
And fortunately, everybody all agreed, and that's when we had our event that we had yesterday.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you were able to put that all together. It was a blast. It was my first time going to the Veterans Expo as well as that Travis Manion meeting, and yeah, it was very nice being able to connect with people there. So I wanted to ask, like I said, you have a very unique service history. A lot of veterans, especially who are active duty and stuff like that, have a difficult time transitioning out of the military.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a similar experience? Did you have difficulty transitioning out of the military?
Yeah, it took some adjusting because, especially in the Marine Corps, everything's like, hard charging all the time.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily talk to people the nicest way at all times, especially when things aren't getting done. So going to academia, even with Texas A&M being a conservative institution, it's still academia. So I immediately became a teaching assistant. So it took a lot of time where they were doing something that upset me. I'd catch myself and I'd sit there and think, to the point one time a student was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm just thinking about what I should say versus what I want to say."
Yeah. Try not to be a drill sergeant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so just yelling, saying something really mean, and then I got kicked out of school. So that was hard. And then also just it was just different. I've made great friends since then that aren't military affiliated, but it was just you didn't have that same camaraderie like you had at your unit where you're at work with these people. You're at PT 05 in the morning.
Definitely.
You're eating breakfast with these people. You're working with them. You have to do working late. Their families, all that. Where I'd see these people in class, and I probably wouldn't see them until the next class. So it was different doing that. And then also my wife was still in, so we were apart for a little bit. So that was tough, but it was just one of those things. Just I kept trying to remind myself, what's the end goal? Why am I doing this? And then just kind of learning to adapt. And again, military, you're always adapting to things.
Yep.
You're just adapting to something else. But it did feel like part of my identity was gone because that's what I did for 5 years of my life. But it's helped me grow as a person, and it's kind of one of those challenges. Hey, anytime you go into a new situation, you graduate school, if you're going to go to a job, you're going to have to adapt. Whether your school circle, how rules were at FGC are going to be different when you go to your first job, and then if you leave that job to go to another job. So it's a skill that taught me to adapt and be able to be flexible. And then work with people from all different types of backgrounds.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you said, you were looking for a challenge, getting into the military, looking for another challenge, getting out of the military, and then looking for another challenge, getting into graduate school.
Yeah.
But you seem to be doing well. You seem to be handling yourself well.
Thank you.
So, did your wife? Did she do the exact same thing that you were doing as well? She was a geospatial analyst?
Yep, she was a geospatial analyst. She earned her bachelor's while she was in the military.
Okay.
We're not going to judge her, but she did it through Liberty. But every time FGC plays them, we typically win. I'll take a screenshot and send it to her.
Of course, rivalry.
Yeah, it's funny because she did all online, so she doesn't really have the sense of I don't even know what their mascot is, but I'm Liberty Flame.
Flame?
But yeah, they're the Flame. Yeah, so she's not really but again, to me, I just like to poke at her. Hey, FGC is better than Liberty.
Of course.
So she did that, and then she actually did the same master's. I did the online master's in geoscience. So she actually just graduated this past fall. So she's a recent master graduate, and now she works as a data scientist. So her role is to take large amounts of data and pull that in and automate processes to support whatever it is that your goal is.
Very cool. How did it's interesting seeing people with similar interests. It's they seem to attract each other, and having someone like your wife doing the exact same thing that you're doing, I'm sure that brings a little bit of competition too.
Yeah, it's funny because in the Marine Corps, we worked together at one point, and
is that how y'all met?
That's how we met. Yeah, and now she's never again. She's like, we can work at the same place, but we can't be on the same team because you think you're in charge. So we joke about that, but it was actually very helpful. We're completely different people.
Yeah.
I'm an extrovert. I like doing it. She's more introvert. So we're opposites in that sense, but job-wise, almost do the same thing. When I was doing my master's and she was doing hers, what I liked was, like, if I was stuck on something, I could talk out loud a problem to her, and she knew what I was talking about, and she would say something, and I'm like, why don't I think of that? And then I'd figure out what I needed to go do to get done. But when it was her turn to do the master's, she refused to get my help because she was like, I don't want you to say you helped me get through this master's. I'm going to do it myself. So she graduated with 4.0 as I did, but she wanted to do it on her own. Fair. So I couldn't hold it over like, hey, I helped you with that assignment. It's, essentially I got you to 4.0. But
no, she could always have that over your head.
Yeah, she did it on her own. Yeah.
That's too funny. So what do you think what is something that, is there something that you miss from the military, or?
So I would say I miss being a Marine the most.
Really?
Around November.
Why is that?
That's the Marine Corps birthday. Right? So we have the Marine Corps ball and all that stuff. So everybody's dressed up in their blues. Definitely don't fit into them anymore. But it makes me like, oh man, I miss it. It's all that camaraderie. Like November was like the happy time, like when you love being a Marine, because you're not really worried about all the PT and being up late doing all that stuff. It was like everybody's having fun. Everybody comes together, has a great time to honor the Marines, the past and the present. Look forward to what we're going to continue to do. So that's what I miss the most. But with me moving to Virginia, I'll be near Quantico, which is a big Marine Corps base.
Yeah.
So I plan to get more involved toward, have friends who are still in, go to their
awesome.
Ball, and still attend those.
Can you still attend as like a?
Yeah, you just get invited as a guest.
Awesome.
And but that's probably what I miss the most. But I still keep in contact with Marine friends. I actually just saw a couple this past weekend before I flew out here. We don't see each other as often as we'd like, but every couple of years we try to make time to go see one another.
Yeah, and it's always being able to see people even once a year. I feel like being able to see them, it makes the hangout a little bit more valuable.
It definitely does.